A Dangerous Daughter by J. Penner, narrated by Virtual Voice. In a time when Egypt teeters between ancient traditions and Roman ambitions, one royal family's internal struggles will reshape history itself. From a world 2 millennia past comes the tale that sets the stage for history's most famous queen, Cleopatra. Before we begin, let me introduce you to the key players in our story. Ptolemy XII, King of Egypt, known as the flutist. His wife and cousin, Cleopatra Tryphaena, their eldest daughter, Berenice, and the young princesses, Cleopatra and Alcinoe. Supporting them are Pothinus, the chief royal advisor, and Achilles, commander of Egypt's armies. This story serves as a prequel to the Last Pharaoh trilogy that covers the rise, reign, and the final chapter of Cleopatra's life. While based on historical events, this work blends fact with fiction to bring ancient Alexandria and Rome to life. Now step with me into a world where politics, alliances, and ambitions shape the destiny of a royal family on the brink of historic change. Chapter 1. Alexandria. Pothinus understood the danger of an Alexandrian mob, a mass of vicious mischief-makers, driven by nothing but a passion for damage, deriving their joy from the destruction they hoped to inflict on all things, buildings, people, and animals, that they encountered as they converged on their target. There was no mob in the world, Pothinus was certain, like the Alexandrian mob. That ferocious beast possessed the power to drive kings from their palaces, as they had done more than once before. And on this day, the target was the palace, and His Majesty Ptolemy, the king. The baying of the man-beasts echoed even deep inside the palace, and he could see wisps of smoke rising from the fire the rioters had set to an adjacent building that housed administrative records. He ushered the royals into the guarded palace hall. The king's wife, Queen Cleopatra Tryphaena, and her daughters, Berenice, Cleopatra Shaw, and Alcinoe, tense and worried, took their places on the silk couches and chairs. The 2 young sons were in the maids' hands, wailing. "His Majesty will be here soon. He is safe and is being brought here," Pothinus assured the worried faces. The royal guard took their places by the door. Should errant miscreants somehow make their way into the recesses of the vast complex, Pothinus hoped that a segment of the royal guard remained loyal to His Majesty, and that this gathering would not end in the slaughter of the entire family, thus vanquishing the bloodline of the great Ptolemaic dynasty. The queen's lower jaw quivered. "In the name of our gods, Your Highness, project strength to your children." Pothinus thought, for the last thing he needed was a wailing queen, making everything worse. "If I must bear the weight of royal decisions, why not make me pharaoh?" But before His Majesty arrived, Pothinus approached Berenice, the eldest daughter, regal in her bearing, tall, slim, and strong. She was 19 years of age, trained in the matters of regency, fluent with administrative procedures when her errant father was absent from his duties, and possessed the cunning and ruthlessness required for one who could be queen. "Your Highness," Pothinus whispered to the princess, "have you considered asking your father to take you with him?" Pothinus was sure he knew the answer, but as the royal advisor, he viewed it as his duty to allow the royal children to come to their own conclusions, prompted by his questioning and insinuation. She fixed her light and sharp eyes on him. They radiated resoluteness. "No, Pothinus. I am going nowhere. Let him leave." "He was never here anyway," she said dismissively. "The people's anger is directed at him, and they will spare us." Clever and ambitious, Pothinus thought, just as he expected. He smoothed his shendit and walked toward the tearful Arsinoe. He felt pity for the girl, a stepdaughter of the queen, temperamental and ignored. Arsinoe found love in her father's arms. Her mother had died when she was young, and the queen, her stepmother, showed little care or concern for her, or for that matter any of her children. "Isis and Zeus protect you, Princess Arsinoe," he said kindly, as he knelt before the sniffling 9-year-old. Arsinoe's pink face was a deep shade of red, her sharp nose even redder, and her maid hovered nearby, wiping the princess's face from time to time. "Is father leaving us?" she asked in her low, crackling voice. Pothinus held her hands. He was one of the few in the kingdom who could show fatherly conduct toward her, for he was sometimes her tutor, sometimes her adviser, and sometimes the father who filled her real father's place. "For your safety, princess. His presence could bring danger to all of you." "Why can't I go with him?" she sniffled. Pothinus knew of the unkindness of her older sister, Berenice. Arsinoe had little love for her. "You poor child. He has not made that determination, your highness, but whatever your father decides will be for the family's safety. His love for you is undiminished." She kept her head low and nodded. Pothinus asked a maid holding the wailing baby Ptolemy to move to the far end of the room, taking the toddler brother, now 3, along with her. He could do without that cacophony. Finally, Pothinus stood before Cleopatra, the 11-year-old second daughter, the king's favourite, and Pothinus's too, for this was an intelligent and stubborn girl who showed curiosity in all matters of the world around her, and little fear for its darkness. "Is her highness keeping well?" he inquired. She nodded. Her glassy eyes conveyed projected strength, though he could see that they had shed tears recently. "I will go with father," she said. For all of his majesty's failings, he had proved to be a kind and loving father when he was present, and his attention they craved, for their mother was distant and cold, burdened by her travails and perpetual sickness. He gripped Cleopatra's palms and spoke to her with affection. "His Majesty keeps you dear in his heart, and whatever he decides will be best for the family." Finally, Pothinus kneeled before Queen Cleopatra Tryphaena, their mother, who was seated on a comfortable chair, looking tired. She was pale and gaunt, and no longer the gentle beauty she had been long ago when she married His Majesty her cousin, as per tradition. "Is Her Majesty prepared for changes in the palace?" Her voice was weak. "As the gods desire," she said. "My husband will show the way." Pothinus was sure His Majesty would not travel with the Queen, for the two were estranged and hardly on speaking terms. "Yes, your Majesty," he said, as he retreated from her. The ornate Lebanese cedar doors flung open, and Amphios, another royal adviser, charged in huffing. "His Majesty will be here soon." Some more guards streamed into the hall, heavily armoured, looking purposeful. Achilles, a senior commander of His Majesty's army, strode into the room, wearing his green and gold cape, bronze armour, and pointed helmet. "His Majesty arrives!" King Ptolemy rushed into the room, wearing a loose tunic and a few adornments. The tall, heavy-set king, his eyes puffy from his latest bouts of drinking, and his curly golden hair dishevelled from the events, acknowledged the children who kneeled in his presence. He barely looked at the queen, who paid little attention to him in return. "The mobs bay for my blood, and my family shall not be sacrificed," he said, without introductions to the situation or a preamble, his voice hoarse and deep. "There is no time. I have decided our course of action." The anxiety was palpable. His Majesty took a deep, raspy breath. "I will leave for Rome and secure support to vanquish my detractors. The scoundrels and treasonous bastards think they can intimidate me." No one said a word. "My wife and first daughter shall remain, managing the affairs of the kingdom with Pothinus's advice. They seem to enjoy the support I do not," he said somewhat bitterly, as if suggesting that they had something to do with his troubles. "And my sons, who will one day rule as kings, shall remain, for their presence will eliminate questions of legitimacy to succession. Arsinoe will stay behind as well." As expected, Arsinoe wailed, "Take me with you, father, please." The little girl ran forward to hold her father's legs. His Majesty's face softened. He bent down and lifted her up by the shoulders. "A princess must be strong, my dear Arsinoe. A spirited girl should not shed tears. You must remain until I return, for your future shines bright here in Egypt." With some difficulty he separated from her, and Pothinus led the princess back to her place, as Berenice glared at the fearful girl. "And you, Cleopatra, will come with me. Circumstances require that we spread the family, in case all those in Alexandria are murdered." He extended his hand to Cleopatra, who walked over and stood by his side. Arsinoe looked at her sister with resentment, and Cleopatra kept her head held low. "Why is she allowed to go, but not me?" Arsinoe yelled in her crackling, youthful voice. The girl's fiery temperament would one day create a confrontation, Pothinus was sure. But her father remained uncharacteristically gentle, for he loved this girl almost as much as he favored Cleopatra. "Have you not had your father's lap whenever you desired, Arsinoe? You will listen to me as your father and king," he said, with mock sternness as he reached forward and ruffled her hair. "And now you will remain silent." The sullen Arsinoe spoke no more. "Achilles and his men will remain as protectors of my realm in Egypt. Pothinus will manage the Romans and the affairs of the government." Pothinus bowed to the king. "Let there be no disruptions in the education of the children," he said. "Theodotus and Areius will continue as tutors." Pothinus had no love for Theodotus, the loud-mouthed rhetorician, but the king had taken a liking to the man's theatrics and loud voice. "I will—" A guard came running into the room, disrupting the king's orders. He whispered to Achilles, who spoke to his Majesty. Suddenly, more soldiers rushed in. Achilles yelled into the room, "We must leave now. His Majesty will board a ship that is ready to leave for Cyprus. Everyone else come with me." Pothinus knew his Majesty had loaded his ships with many valuables from the palace, along with thousands of talents of gold clandestinely pulled from the treasury, stripping the kingdom of its valuables. Even as he flees, men ushered Cleopatra and his Majesty out of the hall, with them barely glancing back at those they left behind. The frightened royal family, along with Pothinus, was escorted through another exit into a basement chamber. As they huddled in the dark room, waiting for further instructions, Berenice crept beside Pothinus. In the sliver of light her smile was crooked. "Father said there would be a joint rule, Pothinus. If you so much as try to put doubt in my role, I will slit your stomach and feed your entrails to the crocodiles in the Nile." Chapter 2, Alexandria. The angry arguments and negotiations with the ringleaders of the rioters, tradesmen, merchants, landlords, and debtors, took 2 days to arrive at a settlement. Their grievances, Pothinus maintained, would be addressed once the kingdom settled into a new rule. Pothinus knew that a calm city was necessary for them to rebuild the tattered army and ensure that power was preserved where it should be. Besides, Her Highness Berenice insisted that the riots be quelled and that her coronation be conducted without delay. "Do you want the Romans to march here and take whatever is left because you do not know when to stop?" he asked one of the leaders. "Yes, His Majesty heard your complaints, and he has left the city. This gives us a chance to set things right under the new rule." "What makes you think that the co-rule of the Queen and her daughter will not continue the same disaster?" the man asked. Pothinus could not begrudge the question, for His Majesty's horrendous mismanagement of the kingdom's finances, due to his uncontrolled spending, high taxes to repay Rome, for debt obligations, rising waves of crime, and highway robberies, had driven the city and its influential men to despair. His Majesty played with a flute, while the kingdom was driven to ruin. No wonder the Romans derisively called him the flutist. His Majesty's absence allows me and the senior officials to regain control of the treasury. Princess Berenice shares your concerns. While not known for her pleasing demeanor, Princess Berenice had a reputation for prudent and calculated actions. She was a learned woman who desired to shine in her father's absence. How free will she be to direct the kingdom without her mother's interference? Another man asked. No one believed that Queen Cleopatra Tryphaena had the capacity or ability to take on the strenuous duties of rule, but with her new power, in the absence of her husband, there was concern about how she would reveal herself. "The princess and I will ensure firm control of administrative decisions, and the Queen Mother will perform her duties to the temples and focus on bringing divine blessing back to this kingdom." While unspoken, they all understood what he meant, that Pothinus would endeavor to relegate the Queen to roles that would keep her out of day-to-day affairs. "We pay you handsomely, Pothinus, but we have seen little by way of results," the leader said. Pothinus bristled at the accusation. "Watch your words, Timaru. If it were not for me, your taxes would be double. Your estates would be confiscated, and some of your heads would be on pikes for accumulating wealth by evading levies. If you wish to return to normalcy, tell your mobs to go home and not come out again." Agreements were made, hoarse promises and proclamations of loyalty were shouted, and finally the mob leaders left with assurances from the palace that a new era would begin, under Queens Berenice and Cleopatra. The coronation was a quick affair at the temple of Taposiris Magna, with the chief priest of Memphis in attendance, along with the resident ambassador of Rome, dignitaries from the city, a representative of Judea, and a hastily transported contingent of commoners. After only an hour of incense burning and incantations, the chief priest of Memphis declared Cleopatra and Berenice as goddesses on earth, proclaimed by divine authority as the new rulers of Egypt, with the king having abdicated and fled. The mother and daughter, resplendent in their flowing golden gowns and Egyptian headgear of vultures, stood before an adoring audience and made brief speeches declaring their love for the land and their desire to elevate Egypt's glory. With Pothinus's exhortation, the royals quickly announced several decrees, including a reduction in annual taxes, reduced transportation levies, deferred debt repayments, sending an emissary to Rome to negotiate loan terms. the release of several influential prisoners, help from the royal treasury to rebuild large agricultural farms and papyrus factories, and the fixing of broken and disorganized administrative structures in the large cities. These measures brought some respite to restless and worried people. In all these matters, Berenice grew adept, willing to listen to her advisers, asking pertinent questions, and making decisions that pleased Pothinus, though he was careful not to portray the actions as stemming from his advice but from royal discretion. As he sat in his expansive courtyard, on his comfortable divan, made and imported from Persia, Pothinus wondered how he might help a nephew who, due to his errant ways, had fallen afoul of Thebes' governor, a nasty man who saw no hesitation in throwing the condemned into the crocodile-infested waters. And then there was the matter of the unctuous Amphios, Berenice's other adviser, who was doing everything he could to overshadow Pothinus. "Your Excellency!" His reverie was interrupted by an adjutant. Irritated, he shielded his eyes from the sun shining behind the man's shoulder. "What is it?" "Her Majesty the Queen desires your presence." "Which Queen?" he asked, an ongoing joke among the palace officials. "Old Queen or young Queen? The weak and tired one, or the angry, feisty one? The perennially disinterested Queen, or the perennially meddling one? The I am the Queen, or the I am really the Queen? The worn-out bored one, or the sensual new one?" And so on, many bordering on extreme impertinence, that might get one flogged or imprisoned. The man took no liberties with Pothinus. "The Mother Queen Cleopatra." "Your Excellency." The Queen's dour look was now mixed with the tinge of irritation. She had rarely summoned Pothinus into her presence, preferring largely to stay with her advisers, tour the many temples and grace ceremonies. But it was true, Pothinus thought, that she had regained some of her spirits after her husband's departure. There was more energy in her steps, strength to her voice, and he had even seen her tend to her younger children, whom she had always almost entirely ignored. "Your Majesty, you summoned?" She nodded from her seat, but did not gesture for him to sit. Pothinus waited for whatever was coming. "Why is my daughter issuing major administrative orders without my approval?" Pothinus was surprised. He had to respond carefully. "Your Majesty, we beg your pardon for the oversight. The burden of rule is heavy, and Her Majesty was busy on matters of bringing the gods back to Egypt. Therefore we proceeded with the lesser actions of daily administration, without further disrupting Her Majesty's work." Cleopatra had a long face that made her sullen appearance further pronounced. Deep hollows below her eyes made her look older than her 38 years. "Take me for no fool, Pothinus. That I was not by my licentious husband's side for years does not mean my senses are so dulled. I see what you are doing." He squirmed at the accusation. "Have I underestimated her?" "Yes, Your Majesty. The agreement was for us to co-rule, and that means on all major matters I must be consulted." "Your Majesty." "Do not lead us toward another civil war, Pothinus, or I shall hold you responsible." "Your Majesty." "You are not the only adviser who knows Egypt. My daughter's ambition must be tempered." "Your Majesty." "Call a council meeting. I wish to make some announcements." Chapter 3. Rome. Cleopatra hated Rome after the long and miserable journey on a ship. first to an island called Cyprus, and then along the Cilician and Greek coasts until they reached Italy. She had to endure days in a shaky carriage that took her to Rome. Her father had been silent and preoccupied, no doubt smarting over how his people had run him out of Alexandria. How could the people of Egypt do that to their king? She knew her father was unpopular among many influential people. She did not understand all of it, but it had to do with money. But Rome was smelly. The cobblestone paths were narrow, dirt lay everywhere, and densely packed hovels abutted the nobles' houses. She was housed in Pompey's villa, which was nothing like her palace. It did not have as many rooms as her palace, and they were not even luxurious, befitting her status. They had slaves to tend to her and her father, for she had not been able to bring her lady-in-waiting. But these slaves did not understand Greek, and she had just begun to learn Latin. Now neither her tutor nor a translator had come with her, and these Romans had not assigned a translator for her, so she struggled to explain to the slaves what she wanted. How long would it take for someone to find Greek servants? A few children from neighboring villas had arrived to greet and play with her, but she found them boring, for they could not read or write, and they did not know how to treat a princess who was also a goddess. It was all miserable. Even the air was unpleasant. It had a strange smell and a heavy texture. The villa was drab. The ceilings were low, nothing like the soaring halls of her palace back in Alexandria, which she missed very much. Since their arrival in Rome, her father had sequestered her, forbidding her to go out. There was no royal zoo here. Many nights she cried quietly in her sleep, but as Theodotus and Arius had taught her, she could not show her grief outwardly, for that would make her seem weak. What was Arsinoe doing? How was Pothinus? Were they taking care of the cats while she was away? The royal adviser and first eunuch of the court was one of her favourites. She missed them, even the temperamental Berenice. Her sister was not the kindest person. She often thrashed her and Arsinoe, but sometimes she told them fascinating stories. Would she ever go home? Back to Rome. What a strange place. They really had no kings. The things she had been taught at home were true. It was all a group of old men deciding together, and she could not understand how that worked. Her father was king, and they made him wait. It was all preposterous. But she had brought several books from the library of Alexandria, and kept herself busy reading, memorizing, and practicing her writing. She would demand that the Romans give her some tutors. In this situation, she finally heard her father say that this day was a momentous one, for two great Roman men by the names of Pompey Magnus, and Marcus Licinius Crassus were visiting them. There was a third famous man, Gaius Julius Caesar, but he was away. Her lessons back home had included brief elements of Roman history, and she knew a little about these men. They were the ones who ruled Rome in some manner. Cleopatra was ushered to her father's presence after the maids dressed her in a crisp cream peplos, a princess's diadem, a golden brooch, and fine kohl under her eyes. "Come here, my daughter," her father said. He too was wearing his traditional gold-bordered white chiton and a bright white silver-studded diadem. He held her hand and walked out with her to the portico of the building, where a few attendants waited. "We will meet some very important men, and you shall accord them respect as if they were kings." Finally, the double doors opened, and Pompey Magnus and Marcus Crassus walked in together. Her father extended his arms wide in greeting. The men hugged, which was a strange scene. She had seen no one hug the king, except his daughters, of course, but Rome was certainly different. Crassus had a mean look, with his sharp nose, creased cheeks, and a scowl. Magnus had a gentler, rounder face. They wore loose white togas with purple borders. Here purple was like royalty, but then the wearers were not kings. It was all strange. What did her father wish to discuss with these men? She demanded to be allowed to the meeting so she could listen, and her father smiled and patted her head. He often did that when he appeared to be listening, but was not. Crassus looked down at her. "Well, this is Her Highness Princess Cleopatra, is it?" She looked at her father, unsure what she was supposed to do because this man was not kneeling before her. "Yes, my second daughter, Honourable Marcus Licinius. I am also a goddess and the embodiment of Isis," she said indignantly. How could they forget that? Pompey threw back his giant head and laughed, and his thick mop of hair shook. "Every bit a princess and goddess," he said, smiling. Even as he gave her a curt bow, she returned it, hoping it was the right thing to do with these Romans, for her father certainly treated them as if they were very important. "How was your journey, Your Majesty?" Marcus Crassus asked. "The journey from Egypt is exhausting, as you might imagine, General, but the comforts of the last few days have eased the pains. I hope my quarters are comfortable, even if they are nothing like your Alexandrian residences," Pompey said. "No, they are not." "It is fit for a king, great General. My daughter is in love with the gardens," her father said. "I'm not." "Shall we?" Pompey gestured, and Cleopatra trailed the men. Irritated at being ignored, she rushed forward energetically and occupied the space between Pompey and her father. Pompey addressed her. "Does Her Highness wish to join the parley?" "Yes, Your Excellency," she said. "I must learn how discussions work if I am to be queen." How can he even ask such a question? Pompey turned to her father. "She is a well-learned young woman, Your Majesty. She speaks better than any girl I know of that age. You should find a fine Roman man for her." "None of your men are kings." Her father laughed. "She is sometimes too well-learned, General, and I must ask you to ignore any insolence. Cleopatra, we must speak privately, so go back to your room." Her cheeks were hot. "Father, I wish to be in the meeting. I will not speak." But before her father could respond, Crassus spoke. "Well, it is exceedingly rare to see a girl of her lineage and age interested in our mundane conversations, Your Majesty. Why not let her join us?" Her father relented, and she suppressed a triumphant smile. But she would try to be quiet, for she knew that her father's temper was not always kind to her. When she was belligerent at school or disrespectful, she earned a caning on her arms, and it could be painful. "You might even make a good wife for me in a few years," Crassus continued, leering at her. What a nasty old man, not a king, but he wanted to be her husband. He was so old, she wrinkled her nose and ignored him. The men became comfortable on the couches as the slaves served wine and bread. She sat on a chair in the corner, fanned by a maid, to ease the stifling heat. Unlike her palace in Alexandria, this little villa, surely enormous by these Roman standards, did not have cooling water ducts that made for a pleasant living. Very backward. Then she listened to them. Chapter 4. Rome. "And you are confident that the queens ruling your kingdom will preserve your power until you can return?" Crassus asked. "I am. The anger of the people will cool, and they will clamour for a king. However, the cabal may not be so welcoming of my return, which is why I need Rome's support to destroy the army that stands against me and to regain power. Is the animosity only toward you, your majesty? Why do you believe that these rebellious units will not join forces with the rioters again and dethrone your wife and daughter? King Ptolemy shook his head. Egypt works in ways you do not understand, excellencies. My family is divine and ordained to rule. No one will dare dislodge them, for doing so will bring down the wrath of the gods and the priests and people. Yet they may control the queens as puppets, or hoist one of my young sons onto the throne and control the kingdom. Pompey rubbed his cheeks and cleared his throat. And why would that be detrimental for Rome? Is he questioning why they should help my father? Her father waved his hand, a gesture that dismissed the weight of the question. Because all those with the power to control the kingdom hate Rome. Do not forget, your excellencies, that Egypt still owes a considerable debt to Rome, and your granaries need an uninterrupted supply. All that will be in jeopardy. Crassus took a long drink and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Barbarian! He hiccuped once before making a comment. So, King Ptolemy, you need our military support to regain your throne so that you can repay us the money you owe. Her father made no response. This time it was Pompey. Our military support requires money, King Ptolemy. Thus we must give you money to recover our money. Her father maintained his composure, for these sentences sounded rude to Cleopatra. But they were logical, as Arius, her tutor in Alexandria, used to say, with his big eyes wide open and crooked teeth in full display. Pompey was right. They needed to spend money to recover their investment. You plant a seed to grow a tree. You send a spy to bring down a fortress. You wed a woman to gain her children. And you kill a deer to feed a man for days, her father said. I ask that you support me with an army, and your return will be 100-fold in the coming years. And for you, Senator Crassus, this investment will cost almost nothing, given your wealth. She had heard that Crassus was the richest man in all of Rome. He was like a king of Rome, but not truly a king. He apparently possessed many thousand talents of gold, yet even that was nowhere near what her father owned, or rather used to own. Marcus Crassus swirled the wine in his cup. Well, your majesty, that has not proved to be true so far, has it? Your rule has been marred by unrest. Your people are unhappy about debt repayments, and you are here because you could not repay Rome, nor could you control your city, he said, his mean face contorting as if he were making fun of her father. The pig! If this were Alexandria, her father would have Crassus flogged and thrown out. Now, Marcus, we do not know all the circumstances, Pompey said, intervening like a kindly uncle. She liked him more than the impudent Crassus. Your Majesty, how will it be different this time? Her father rose from his couch and paced around. He was a large man, even taller than these two Romans. I now know who conspires against me. I know the cabals that have weakened me. With Roman support, I will wipe out the vermin who dared raise their hands against me, and there will be no doubt who is king. Payments to Rome and those who have stood by my side will resume, much of it coming from confiscating the vast amounts that the treasonous bastards have amassed in Alexandria. Appropriations, Cleopatra blurted, unable to control her excitement at recognizing a term with significance. She had learned all about it to punish errant citizens. Her father knitted his eyebrows, but Pompey threw his head back and laughed again. Her Highness is ready to be queen. That is right, young Cleopatra. Appropriations are a means to keep nobility in check. Would you like to return to your quarters? Her father asked in his stern voice. She controlled her smile, proud that even this great Pompey had acknowledged her, and bowed to her father. My apologies, father. I will only listen. Crassus did not appear convinced by her father's words. Well, your majesty, as much as I would like to strike an arrangement with you in exchange for influencing the Senate to support your claim to your throne, I am about to launch an expedition to Parthia, which will strain all my finances. Parthia! She almost blurted out that she knew about it, but remembered her place. Parthia was a great kingdom with fierce warriors. Long ago, in her favorite Alexander stories, she had learned that the great god had conquered that kingdom and seized it from a king named Darius. Or perhaps they were Persians. She could not quite remember. Crassus was not finished. His face remained mirthless and stern. For the richest man in Rome, well, not as rich as her and not royal either, he was nevertheless a dour, unhappy man. While I am away, Pompeius here might be of assistance, for he is no less powerful and influential. She liked Pompey more. Would he help her father? Pompey adjusted his toga and snapped his fingers for wine. She never thought she would see a day when men lounged in front of her father, snapping their fingers and speaking freely. Her father was not the king of the world, but she would change that by becoming queen of the world. Then no one would snap their fingers in front of her. Well, your majesty, Roman politics is more complex than His Majesty's world. In Egypt, you are the power. What you say is law, or rather what you said, he amended, and Crassus sniggered. But her father remained quiet. Pompey continued, But Rome has many masters, Crassus, or Caesar, or Cicero, or me. We cannot lift our hands and command the rest to obey. We carry the Senate on our shoulders, and it is those men you must convince, for no intervention in foreign territory may occur without the Senate's approval. Her father looked frustrated. As three of the most powerful men of the Republic, cannot you make this happen? Crassus ran his finger along the rim of the cup and exchanged glances with Pompey. Pompey sat up and leaned forward. Powerful we are, your majesty, but if we must exert our influence— His voice trailed off. I understand, Pompeius. My gratitude to Rome will come with generous additional allowances in return for your support. Pompey smiled. Cleopatra knew it had something to do with paying both Rome and Pompey. They just wanted more money. When she became queen and possessed more money than anyone else in the world, all men would bow to her, whether in her kingdom or beyond. That much was clear. Well, your majesty, I might lend my voice. However, like all men who require Rome's assistance, you must appear before the Senate and plead your case, Pompey said. Appeal to the Senate. Cleopatra was mortified to hear that. The way nobles and princes stood in her father's court and appealed to him, like that. Her father, a king. Would he engage in this appealing? But my father is king, she blurted out. Cleopatra, her father thundered. Pompey smiled, but the mean-faced Crassus's eyes were hard and cold. He wagged a finger at her and said sternly, Not any more, young princess. And not here in Rome. No one is king here. Her cheeks flushed, and she feared what her father might do to her. A sound caning, perhaps. She should have kept quiet. But his demeanour softened. You must be quiet when the men speak, child. Let her be, Marcus. There is a fire in the little princess, not something we see in girls her age. The Ptolemies raise their daughters differently, it seems. And if your elder daughter is anything like this one, Pompey said, pointing toward Cleopatra, then your challenge may not just be outside the royal family, your majesty. I would never go against father. Berenice will not defy me, her father said, as he smoothed the golden curls on his head. His belly had grown large, and she hoped he would drink and eat less. They will co-rule until I return. Crassus merely remarked, So you say. Well, what do you think, your highness? Pompey turned to her suddenly. Do you believe your sister will relinquish her throne for your father if he returns? She choked. What if she said something terrible that made her father furious? She was not sure Berenice would let go. Her sister was frightening and mean, like Crassus. She had heard her sister say many times that she would make a better ruler than her useless father. But she dared not say that out loud, or her sister might have her murdered. With all eyes upon her, she regained her composure. One of her tutors, Theodotus, had taught her in his rhetoric classes to project confidence and power, regardless of how one felt inside. She sat straight, puffed out her chest, and gripped the arms of the chair. My sister will do what is best for her, she whispered, and when they stared more, she offered no additional commentary. A queen will let the people infer her words, and she must offer no explanation. Theodotus had advised in a lesson just before the tumult in Alexandria. Crassus only nodded. Pompey turned to her father. May we stroll in the gardens, your majesty? It is stuffy here, even if I love this villa. Like all the others, Pompey said. And you must excuse us, little highness, for it is time for us to confer on matters that will take you a few more years to appreciate. His voice was kind. Her father nodded. You stay here, he ordered her. And she dared not object this time, but the creased face, thin-haired Crassus remained where he was. I will chat with the interesting princess, he said, while his majesty and Pompey strike arrangements. Her father smiled approvingly. No, I wish it was Pompey. The two men rose and left the hall, leaving her with scowl-faced Crassus. She snapped her fingers for a slave to bring some grape-infused sweet water. She loved this new drink, which she could not obtain in Alexandria. Crassus leaned back. Well, Princess Cleopatra, how do you find Rome? She weighed her words and remembered her father's instructions. If you say bad things about Rome, they might not help us. It is a magnificent city, exquisite, and fit for great men, she said. Crassus's wrinkles danced with a smile. Did your father instruct you to say that? Fear not, young princess. Your candid words will not be held against you. Few think Rome beautiful. A surge of relief coursed through her. It is not as nice as Alexandria, she finally said, now suspicious of how easily he had discerned her true feelings. He laughed at that. Perhaps you will not be happy as my wife. This time she would not be restrained. You are too old to be my husband, Marcus, she said. Even using his first name, he did not seem offended at all. Instead, Crassus laughed loudly. A child, and yet a real princess. I have not seen one like this, he said to no one in particular. Well, I have heard much about the magnificent library in Alexandria. Do you spend time there? I go there 5 days in every 7 to sit before my tutors and learn, she said with pride. And what do you learn? He asked, his eyes unblinking. About my ancestors, about the god and general Alexander, Homer's poems, mathematics, and medicine. You sound quite learned. Can you read and write? What a stupid question. Did Roman children not learn early enough? I can read, but I am still improving my writing. Very well, you must learn Latin some day. Greek will do fine for now. I know how to speak Latin, but my accent is imperfect. They say I am good with languages. I plan to learn all the languages of the major kingdoms, and I am the only one in my family who can speak Egyptian. Crassus smiled. Then he looked thoughtful, jutting his jaw and drumming his fingers. Do you know, Princess Cleopatra, that your father was king because Rome allowed him to be? He said, changing topics. She was surprised. What did he mean? She had not heard about Rome controlling her father's position. He was king, and it was his divine right. He looked at her, unblinking, and continued, It is true, Egypt owes much to Rome. It is by Rome's authority that he was even king. But don't ask him about that, for it may make him enraged toward you. Many years ago your father paid 6,000 talents to Caesar to proclaim himself king. She knew nothing about this. My father makes agreements all the time, as kings do. Crassus's smile vanished. You will be in much trouble if he does not repay Rome. My father will succeed, she said, gripping the arms of the chair. Well, if he does not, you will become a slave, he said, smiling cruelly. What a nasty, nasty man. How dare he even think of her as a slave? I am a descendant of goddesses. No one can make me a slave, she said indignantly. Have you ever been outside Egypt, apart from Italy? I have not. I will see the world when I am older. Alexander conquered Persia. I will be in Parthia soon. Will you be going all the way to India? He was surprised. You have been taught well. No, I do not intend to go all the way to India. You are no Alexander. My great forefather went all the way to India. Do you like your sister? He asked. Why does he want to know? Is he trying to trick me? She mulled over his question. She was preparing to be queen, so she is strict, as she must be. So you don't like her? Her cheeks flushed. How could he guess what she was really thinking so easily? She looked at her ochre-coloured, painted fingernails. He changed the subject again. What did he want from her? She blinked away the tears welling in her eyes. She missed Arsinoe, although they fought a lot because her younger sister was not as mature and had a bad temper. They still played together often. Even the baby brothers were fun to have. Then there were the children of the high priests and senior nobles who could mingle with her, and they spent hours talking about everything and everyone. She missed sitting cross-legged in the tutoring room, memorizing poems, or reading long scrolls. She missed the aroma of wood in the closed chambers, and the smell of aging papyrus, the stream of sunlight through the lofty windows, and the ruckus of seagulls, the many animals in the wonderful zoo by the palace. She even missed Arius's yelling, and Pothinus's lecturing. Even Theodotus's dramatic performances. She missed all of them. She was stuck in this stupid, smelly city with this nasty man who kept telling her she could be his wife or become a slave. Some maids had told her gross and disgusting stories about men and their penis and what they did with it, and this nasty old man, if he were her husband, would show his ancient penis. It was all revolting. Crassus was still eyeing her like a hawk. Do not be fearful, princess. You are safe here. Worry not about becoming a slave, for I am sure Pompey will help your father, and all will be well. Besides, you are too young to be my wife. She sighed with some relief and nodded. But how did he know everything she was thinking? What power did he have? Crassus's features softened somewhat. Well, I will leave to conquer Parthia soon. I hope your father receives the help he seeks. But you, Cleopatra, will one day become queen. I see that already. Whether that is good or bad for Rome, we will see. Chapter 5, Alexandria. Pothinus, Amphios, Achillas, senior officials of the government, and a representative to the high priest of Memphis, all arrived at the throne room and waited for the two queens to arrive. What now? Amphios muttered. The son of an affluent trader who had risen through the palace ranks alongside Pothinus. Amphios was ambitious and often at loggerheads with Pothinus for royal attention. Pothinus was unsure where his loyalties lay. Another play worthy of the attention of the gods, Pothinus concurred, and we both know why. Achillas, who stood nearby, looked pained. The stress of managing the two queens, along with the still simmering unrest in the city, months after the king's expulsion, wore heavily on everyone. Eventually, to the drums of the announcers, mother and daughter entered the throne room, followed by their ladies-in-waiting and attendants. Both queens were dressed in exquisite, almost identical, bright white chitons and silver-studded silk diadems. Did they consult each other on their attire while not discussing anything else? Pothinus mused. They approached their thrones, and the audience supplicated, as was customary. Achillas cleared the hall, leaving only those who mattered most. Finally, Pothinus, as the senior adviser and the most important official of the royal court, stepped before the queens. Your majesties have called the court, and your servants are here for your orders. Berenice said nothing as she stared ahead. Did her highness know what this was about? But her mother, Cleopatra Tryphaena, addressed the court in a firm voice. The wispy weakness and subdued tone had vanished. This land has two queens. Major decisions must have the approval of both. Is that not clear to anyone? Pothinus's breath caught in his throat. The others looked at the floor. And yet, some decisions, and for this I look at you, Pothinus, and Amphios, and you, Minister of the Treasury, have been made without my knowledge. Pothinus glanced at Berenice to see if she would speak up, but she continued to stare ahead stoically. May Amun give me strength. He mustered the courage, and for that, the court begs Her Majesty's mercy. The protocols were unclear, and given the urgency and both Your Majesty's attention focused on different matters, we proceeded accordingly, he said, bowing to the mother. For Her Majesty, he said, bowing to the mother, we executed orders related to the priesthood and prayers, and for Her Majesty, he said, now bowing to the daughter, on matters of administration. Berenice's lower lip twitched, but she said nothing. However, Cleopatra's voice rose. That is just a flimsy excuse. You think you can relegate me to the temple chambers, spending all my days praying, and it was your hasty actions that led to a Roman being lynched in the city. Do you all realize how dangerous that is? Pothinus squirmed. So she had already learned. A Roman financier had inflamed the passions of his debtors, which led to another mob uprising. He had been cornered in his villa, his house set on fire, and he had been beaten to death when he tried to flee. Egypt's precarious condition, with its very existence in question, based on Rome's will, could become dire quickly if news travelled. The impunity of the mob was partially a result of Queen Berenice's harsh words against Roman interference, misconstrued as permission to defy Romans and confront them with violence. Pothinus issued strong warnings and prevented any further misadventure, but the damage had already been done. Berenice exploded. "How long will you behave like sheep before the Romans, mother? Father had no will or strength to stand up to them, and now you wish to continue the same failed policies, trying to mollycoddle a beast that is never satisfied, no matter how much meat you throw at it." Her mother jerked in surprise. "How dare you—" "No, you, mother, you know nothing about ruling. You have hidden from everything all these years, and you think you know everything." Pothinus was stunned at the outburst. He looked at his feet and fidgeted. "Watch your insolence, Berenice." Cleopatra raised her voice. The court fell deathly quiet, unsure how to react to two royals squabbling in full view. "I was by your father's side, watching his every move as king, when you were still a naked infant in maid's arms." Queen Berenice turned to her mother and stabbed the air with her finger. "That means nothing any more. Let me run the kingdom without your interference, mother. Stay content in the temples." Pothinus steeled his resolve and stepped forward to the thrones. "Your Majesties, we need—" "Not now, Pothinus." Berenice wagged a finger. Her stern face was red and her eyes blazed with anger. "We must rest this matter now. What does our law state?" Pothinus hid his emotions. Berenice had made an enormous mistake. She just did not know it yet.